Let's talk about the endocrine glands, starting at the top with the hypothalamus. Hypothalamus is cone-shaped and it points down toward the pituitary. Pituitary is about the size and shape of a pea, so we're going to color it green. It has two parts to it, the anterior pituitary and the posterior pituitary. Next is the thyroid gland, located just in front of the trachea in the neck. On the thyroid gland are 4 parathyroid glands. You can see small dots on there. The parathyroid glands target the bones, and bones are slightly beige, so we're coloring parathyroid a light brown. The liver is next. Notice that it is not an endocrine gland. It stores glucose and is stimulated by 4 hormones from the endocrine glands: insulin, glucagon, cortisol, and epinephrine. The pancreas is about the size and shape of a banana, so we are shading it yellow. The adrenal gland has 2 parts. The outside is the cortex, and the inside is the medulla. It is located on top of the kidney, and like an orange, the fruit, if you peel back the darker peel, you get a lighter color orange on the inside. Thus, we're coloring the adrenal gland orange. Next, we have the kidneys. Note they are not endocrine glands, but they are stimulated by 2 hormones from the endocrine system to help with water, sodium, and blood pressure regulation. It is targeted by ADH and aldosterone. Next, we have the ovaries, which we're coloring pink because we often dress baby girls in pink. And last, the testes, we are shading blue because we dress little boys in blue. Hormones from the hypothalamus spell the word AGOAT. ACTHRF has what it targets right in the name of it: adrenal corticotropin releasing factor. So it causes the release of ACTH from the pituitary. GnRH is gonadotropin releasing hormone, so it causes the release of the gonadotropins from the pituitary. Oxytocin and ADH are both produced in the hypothalamus and stored in the posterior pituitary. TSHRF causes release of thyroid stimulating hormone from the pituitary. The hypothalamus controls the release of hormones from the posterior pituitary by nerve impulses and from the anterior pituitary by hormone-releasing factors. The pituitary gland controls most of the other glands in the body by sending out hormones that affect those glands. In other words, it releases tropic hormones. Pituitary gland has 2 parts, the anterior and posterior lobes. The anterior lobe produces 6 hormones. The posterior lobe stores 2 hormones produced in the hypothalamus: antidiuretic hormone and oxytocin. ADH is released in response to dehydration or thirst. It targets the kidneys and blood vessels. It increases water reabsorption into the blood by the kidneys and causes vasoconstriction in the blood vessels, which means they get smaller. Both increase blood pressure. This results in lower volume and more concentrated urine. Hypersecretion, so too much ADH, results in abnormal water retention. Hyposecretion, or too low, is a type of disorder called diabetes insipidus. A person with that would urinate more often because they can't keep water in their body. Oxytocin is produced in the hypothalamus. It targets the uterus and mammary glands. For both, it initiates contractions. In the uterus, that would be for birth, and in the mammary glands, it would be to release milk. Hyposecretion, so not enough of it, results in prolonged or difficult birth. Hypersecretion results in inappropriate ejection of milk. The anterior pituitary, remember, makes 6 hormones. First one is thyroid stimulating hormone, which targets the thyroid gland and causes the thyroid gland to produce thyroxine. ACTH targets the adrenal cortex and stimulates the release of stress hormones aldosterone and cortisol. And we'll just note that adrenal and cortex start with the same letters as the hormones they release, aldosterone and cortisol. HGH, human growth hormone, targets most cells, mostly bones and muscles. It promotes growth through production of proteins. Hypo, or not enough of it, secretion is dwarfism. Hyper secretion, depending on the time in life that it happens, can result in gigantism if it's released as a child, or acromegaly if released as an adult. HGH plays a key role in regulating body composition, including the amount of muscle mass versus fat mass. HGH also helps to sustain healthy bone density and aids in metabolism. Research suggests it may play a role in maintaining cognitive abilities too. No evidence suggests that HGH works against the effects of aging. In fact, taking HGH may be dangerous for some people. Let's see what's happening in this graph. We have growth hormone decline. We can see amount secreted and age. So we can see as a person gets older, growth hormone declines. Next graph, let's take a look at what's happening here. We can see there's an increase in growth hormone, and then after about 50 minutes, it increases significantly. Next graph, we can see 24-hour hormone levels and amount of belly fat. And if we read the title, 24-hour growth hormone release compared to amount of belly fat. So as belly fat increases, the amount of hormone decreases. And then one last graph, growth hormone levels following weight training with rest periods or weight training with limited rest. Let's take a look at what's happening here. We have weight training with rest is the orange, weight training without rest is the black, and we can see generally growth hormone increases with exercise. We can also see that weight training without rest causes a greater increase in growth hormone. So growth hormone as a child can result in gigantism. It can affect cartilage and bone cells. As an adult, acromegaly is broadening of facial features, hands, and feet. And the reason that they broaden or get wider is that they can no longer get any taller because they are done growing. Follicle stimulating hormone targets the ovaries and testes. It stimulates follicle development. So in females, it's production of eggs and estrogen. And in males, production of sperm in testes. Hypo or low secretion inhibits sexual development and causes sterility. Luteinizing hormone is produced in the anterior pituitary. It targets the ovaries and testes. It stimulates ovulation or release of egg and progesterone and estrogen production in females and testosterone production in males. Hyposecretion inhibits sexual development and causes sterility, which means no production of sperm or eggs. Prolactin targets the mammary glands. It stimulates and maintains milk production in females. Let's look at the root word here. Lactin sounds like lactose, which is the sugar in milk. So how to remember all of the pituitary hormones? It spells the word goat flap. So remember what G stood for. It was GH. O and A are stored in the posterior pituitary. That's oxytocin and ADH. T was for TSH. F is FSH. L is for LH. A is for ACTH. And P is for PRL or prolactin.